Morning, everyone. The March 24th meeting of Haliburton County Council is now in session. Warden Liz Danielson presiding.
Good morning, everyone. Hopefully everybody's been enjoying this nice little burst of spring weather. I'm not sure we can hope that it'll last though. Anyway, if our Ms. Rutter could give a roll call, please.
Councillor Moffat.
Present.
Warden Danielson.
Present.
Councillor Roberts.
Present.
Councillor Kennedy.
Present.
Councillor Burton.
Present.
Councillor Ryle.
Present.
Councillor DeVolen.
Present.
And Councillor Shell.
Present.
Thank you.
And could I have a mover and seconder to adopt the agenda for today? Councillor DeVolen and Councillor Shell. Thank you.
By Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Shell. Be it resolved that the March 24th, 2021 Haliburton County Council agenda be approved.
All in favor? Carried. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof today? Councillor Kennedy.
So Councillor Kennedy has submitted a written notice that he has a indirect conflict of interest for item number 7C on the agenda, the Haliburton County Rail Trail request for HCDC support, as he is currently the chair of the Haliburton County Development Corporation. And he has filed that with the clerk.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Could I then have a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes from February 24th? Councillor Roberts and Councillor Burton. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Burton. Be it resolved that the minutes from the February 24th, 2021 meeting of Haliburton County Council be adopted as circulated.
All in favor? Carried. No business arising from previous minutes, so we will get into our delegations. And first, we welcome Ms. Jane McCulloch and Pamela Marsalis to talk to us about their thoughts on a linear park for the rail trail. Good morning, ladies. Pamela, you're on mute. There.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. Jane's going to start off.
Presentation up on the screen. Do we have the presentation? Pardon. Great, thank you very much. Good morning, I'm Jane McCulloch, and I'm privileged to have had the opportunity to work on this project over the last 9 months. I have 20 years of experience working in the trail industry, and I can tell you that you have an untapped asset here that many communities would give anything to have. We appreciate your attention today and gratefully acknowledge HCDC for supporting this community development project. Next slide, please. To recognize the HCRT as a linear park during COVID-19 and beyond into recovery, both health and economic recovery, that is. This slide outlines some of the steps we took to explore this topic thoroughly. Could you go back to the previous slide, please? Thank you. I'm pleased to be speaking to you about the promising opportunity to reimagine the Haliburton County Rail Trail as a linear park. COVID-19 has taught us many things. However, I believe one of the greatest things it has taught me is that community green space is an asset we value now more than ever. Friends of the Rail Trail has been creatively connecting community and rail since 2007. They can't continue this in isolation. Haliburton County has a huge opportunity ahead if you can partner with Fort as they share with your community what we've learned together during this project. Slide 3, please. Community rail trails can provide a wide range of opportunities. We did a lot of research over the last 9 months. That research, coupled with my extensive experience in the field, led us to focus on these 3 areas of growth that the HCRT could realize. Each report can stand alone, but they do build on each other. Next slide, please. To complement the research, Pamela has been bicycling the HCRT regularly from May through October, observing and documenting the new influx of visitors during the pandemic's first wave in 2020. We expect that to grow this season. I'll now hand it over to Pamela.
Frog in my throat. Good way to start. Thanks, Jane. These ride logs form one of the appendices, those add-ons, among many others in our series of findings, which will be posted online by mid-April and shared widely within the community. Next slide, please. For the Untapped Cycling report, we started off with expert interviews. It included a photo essay of who was cycling on the HCRT, a timeline, and resources for further investigation. I would like to particularly bring your attention to the similarities we found between snowmobile touring, such as the RAP, Round Algonquin Park, a multi-day tour that's popular with snowmobilers, and this one-day family-friendly tour, Far, Forest and Rail, developed locally, and long-distance bicycle tours. These are kind of bookends in terms of tourism potential growth for the Haliburton County Rail Trail. We believe that this brings the greatest potential for tourism related to the HCRT as we emerge into economic recovery. The Otago Central Rail Trail in New Zealand portrays this potential, and it was related to us by one of our interview subjects. Next slide, please. This trail, it's literally a linear park. En français, on dit parc linéaire, le petit train du Nord. It parallels the route of the Toronto Algonquin Greenway between Toronto and the Highlands of Haliburton in Quebec by traversing rail trails between just north of Montreal up into the highlands of the Laurentians. This linear park bike path kicked off the 5,000 kilometer Route Verte, which is world famous. Next slide, please. Health and nature. This report took the bulk of our time. There was just such a wealth of material to review here. There's an obvious connection between finding solace in nature to help us heal from this pandemic. And the rail trail was a magnet for people from the GTA and all over Haliburton County during the first wave of the pandemic and right through the season last year. Next slide, please. We interviewed residents and visitors that I met on the trail. These are all documented in another appendix. We found significant healthcare cost savings that could be realized. The number one concern for everyone we interviewed was safety on the Haliburton County Rail Trail. That could almost be its own report. There were so many aspects to this from the very beginning until the end of last season and on into this season. It's a huge topic. It needs to be addressed by the county and the community. Two other top themes were the true value of the Haliburton County Rail Trail as a natural asset and how it can tie in with the relief we need in these tough times in terms of mental health. And we received an announcement on February 22nd that Ontario doctors are now able to literally prescribe nature. Next slide, please. This success story, similar in length to ours in a rural setting, was developed intentionally as a heritage trail linear park by York County, PA. It started in the early 90s and they call it a county park. So we thought it would be worth a look. It turns out we couldn't have found a model trail with more going on. There are literally 25 websites, local, regional, and international, that make reference to this wonderful trail, and it's something that we will be developing a special profile about and delivering it to our local business community here. Next slide, please. That brings us to business and ECDev, economic development. Last month, you saw at this meeting, HCDC gave an impressive showcase of their work in the community. They have two streams of activity, offering help to businesses and supporting local community economic development. Similarly, we looked at these two components of rail trail linear parks. Next slide, please. The county asset is the corridor, which was purchased in 1988. At that time, proponents that wanted to see it developed as a snowmobile trail, which it has been, suggested that in the other seasons, as they had seen in other rail trails around Ontario at that time, it could be a linear park to benefit the entire county. That's your county asset. The linear park idea has never been really fully realized. That's what we're looking at. It's an element of community economic development. In terms of linear park models, I looked at an example of three main types of linear parks. Next slide, please.
Pamela, sorry, if I could just
Yes?
interrupt you for a minute. The pages that you're moving around are interfering a lot with what you're saying.
Yes, of course,
so-
that makes sense because I'm right over the mic. I'm sorry, Liz. Thanks.
It's okay.
That.
Carry on.
Okay, ask me if I'm nervous. Okay, next slide, please. So the three main types of linear park that we looked at are those that focus on nature, culture, and tourism, and there was an example of each one. So we'll have a quick look at those. Next slide, please. In nature, the Meadow Way, you may have already heard of that in one of my tag presentations, because it is part of the tag route and it's also part of the International Highline Network. So we are connected to this wonderful natural linear park called the Meadow Way. Next slide, please. Rail Park is an example of a people place. Placemaking is a term that's used popularly. It's a rail park that animates the trail with community events regularly. It's also part of the International Highline Network. Next slide, please. This one is the most wonderful example that we profiled for tourism potential. Again, it's something that we will be able to develop a full presentation all on its own to present to our local business community here. It has, similar to ours, it's in a rural community. It has a trestle bridge. It has a sculpture park. It has wonderful on-trail food services and a brewery passport. I'm going to turn it over to Jane, still on this slide, please.
Thank you, Pamela. From my perspective, the Haliburton County Rail Trail has all of the key elements to transition to this type of trail. I've visited some of the leading destination trails throughout North America, and Haliburton County is a perfect fit to the tried and true model that they showcase. This example features an imaginative on-trail food business, local bike rentals, and a regional brewery passport, as Pamela mentioned. These are typical examples of economic development that the brightest and best trails can inspire. Businesses can successfully diversify products to cater to a new trail market. Where a business or service might not have the capacity as a singular entity, they combine resources to benefit each other and the whole region. Next slide, please. I believe there's absolutely no need to reinvent the wheel. You have these plans, strategies, and initiatives already in place. There is a very close alignment between each of these and a linear park vision for the HCRT. Next slide, please. Here are half a dozen untapped opportunities waiting to be realized through a new collaborative approach to the HCRT. I believe you've explored rural transportation options. These programs can be cost prohibitive, but a for-profit bike shuttle service can subsidize a public RTO. Ambassador stewardship can share the load with staff, And philanthropy and sponsorship is found money that a friend's organization can help you realize. Next slide. Thank you. These are some of the local community partners that you have available. Next slide, please. And business partners that will both contribute and benefit from a newly reimagined linear park. Pamela.
Next slide, please. This is the current HCRT trailhead at Gellert Road. Our next HCDC application is focusing on the area between this trailhead and downtown Haliburton Village. We made a presentation to the Rotary Club about the possibility of them contributing a map kiosk. It's one of the type of projects they like to do with, you can imagine a nice timber structure shelter with maps and information, directing people in both directions. And this is really important. So most map kiosks are focused from someone driving into a parking lot and heading out onto a trail. If the HCRT became part of a regional network welcoming cycling tourism from literally all over North America, there are going to be hungry, thirsty, weary, excited travelers coming up that trail. And they come to this parking lot, you can't see the town. They want to know what's just over that hill, how do I get there? What will there be to welcome me? So this would be what we're focusing on, this connection between town and trail and town. The route between this parking lot and the new Rotary Visitor Center in Haliburton Village is uncertain. It needs wayfinding, it needs welcoming signage, and in order to develop that successfully, our project, if it will be accepted by HCDC, is all about community engagement in the village to reach the people that will be utilizing this connection to help us design the wayfinding so it's truly effective. So that's one ask that we have for you, that you write a letter to support that application. In order to facilitate that, I would happily forward the entire grant application to Amanda for her review. Next slide, please. The other things that'll be happening. Friends of the Rail Trail is developing a new website. This is leapfrogging off of a new website that's being developed for TAG, which has been donated by a philanthropist. So this harkens back to something we just talked about. All of our research will be posted on this website because it's too much to email to you in this report. We will continue to look for partners within the community, as Jane mentioned, both community and business partners to collaborate with, and we hope the county will be one of our collaborative partners. For instance, during the upcoming Sunday Rambles, the COVID edition every Sunday in April and May, come on out and join us. Get to know the public that is out there on the rail trail, safely spaced out during COVID-19. And of course, we'll be continuing our mandate, which is connecting community and rail trail. So thank you from me, and Jane, a final word.
I want to thank you for the opportunity to present today. I'd also like to thank Pamela and the Friends of the Rail Trail for the chance to thoroughly explore all aspects of the HCRT as a linear park. It is a grassroots enthusiasm such as this that I believe can have a significant impact on creating vibrant and thriving communities. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Final slide.
Well, thank you to you both. I must apologize, but I've got to say that it might have been, I hear what you're saying about not attaching the appendices because of the amount of information, but it's a little bit difficult for us to make a decision on something that we don't have all the information for. I'm really glad to hear that there is more information for us to look at and review. I would like an opportunity to see what's included in the appendices, because that'll really help to support the arguments that you're making. One of the comments that I would make is that I don't know that we have yet, as a council or our working group on the rail trail, have defined our vision of a linear trail. Because it's my understanding that there are, a linear trail can be any number of things to any number of places. So I think that's something that we're going to have to do. Personally, I'd like to see the information taken to the working group and for it to be included in the work that we're doing. And I know that there's been some delay in those meetings for a variety of reasons, but that's not to say that it won't go forward soon. I guess I would look right now to comments or questions from council. Councillor DeVol and then Councillor Roberts.
Well, thank you for this presentation this morning. Very interesting stuff. Well done. One thing that's not mentioned here, and so I'm going to ask the question straight up. Does your plan preclude the use of ATVs on the rail trail?
Okay, it's not a plan, it's a process. We're not asking you to say yes or no to anything today. We're asking you to collaborate with Friends of the Rail Trail. All our research, let me just clarify, there are 3 reports. Each one is well over 20 pages. The first one's on untapped cycling potential, the second one on health and nature, the final one on business and economic development. Those are the 3 reports. There are multiple appendices and individual profiles of other rail trails. This is a huge process. It's going to take days, weeks, and months to roll this out in our community. What we're asking today is to go through that journey together, collaboratively, not as, you versus Friends of the Rail Trail and community advocates crying to be listened to. We want to do this together in the way that we have seen other communities do this for great success. So I can't answer that question today. No one can. It's just the beginning of a process.
I think Councillor Roberts is next and then Councillor Moffat.
Thank you, Warden. And thank you, Pamela and Jane, for your presentation. I agree, untapped potential for sure. And I know just even last spring and over the summer that I myself walked and biked other sections of the trail that I had never been on before. One of the problems I see also, though, is some access points for if you don't want to do it's quite challenging to do the whole trail and back. So it's that, where do you park a vehicle? Like, you can't even park your vehicle at Howland Junction. There's 0 parking there. So there's limited space for that. But we have been working in that working group that the warden referred to. And I think this is something that maybe should be, taken to that for our next meeting and discussed. And then the only other thing I wanted to ask you, Pamela, if you wanted to just briefly touch on the report that you brought to Dysart to do a fundraiser for Friends of the Rail Trail, and just explain that what little project you have there, because obviously you need some seed money. You haven't done much fundraising. And also, I always know you as Friends of the Rail Trail, like, how many members are there? What's the board? I don't know any other people that are members, and do you encourage people to join the Rail Trail, Friends of the Rail Trail?
Okay. I was thinking that I had listed the members of the committee on my letter to you, but I realized that was in the HCDC application. So there are about 7 members on the management committee. We're part of the co-op board. we at the high point, we had 120 members. That was when we had the full April and May Sunday rambles, free of motorized vehicles up until 2014. When that changed, we did see a drop off in our membership. Then we took a few years off to focus on development of TAG, Toronto Algonquin Greenway. So right now, this invitation to watch this presentation went out to, I'm going to say about 180 people on my contact list. So there were people watching from outside Ontario. The keynote speaker that we had at the TAG Summit in November 2019 in Providence, Rhode Island is watching today. We have a big community. About the Climb, Ramble, and Roll, the Land Trust does not want to support bike events. So we've just parked that idea for this season. We're going to focus on this Trail to Town project instead. And the community engagement of that project will help build our membership, and that in turn will help our fundraising.
Councillor Moffat.
Thank you, Madam Warden, and thank you, ladies, for the presentation. A lot of really good work, so appreciate that. And Pamela, you know, we've had many conversations over the years, and your knowledge of and passion for the rail trail is unprecedented. So thank you for continuing to work on it. The Rail Trail Committee will resume when we get a new Public Works Director. And I'm excited to see how this folds into both the destination management plan and the economic development work. And I think to support anything going forward now before those things get underway, I think makes it into a silo, which we're trying to avoid. The entire purpose of the destination management plan was consolidate the efforts for a collective outcome. I think there's absolutely a role for this work inside both of those processes. And I look forward to seeing how they fit in there going forward.
Any other comments or questions from council? Councillor Shell.
I just, to kind of reiterate what Councillor Moffat just said, my thoughts too when I saw this come forward was, you know, we're talking about an economic development officer, and I think this is something that role would take on and could bring maybe more clarity back to council that includes all the appendices that we're missing, etc. And yeah, that's just my thoughts. Thanks, Pamela, and thank you, Jane.
So a couple of questions. One, would you be able to make the appendices available to members of council so that we can look at that and have those documents to help us with our work going forward? And second, I would like council's thoughts on the request for support for the Friends of the Rail Trails application to HCDC. Councillor Moffat, then Councillor Kennedy.
I absolutely see the value of continuing with the momentum that this first part of the project has created. However, I think it might be a bit cart before the horse until we see how the other components play out. It is the work that we have ahead with the destination management plan and creating an economic development position are equally as big and multifaceted as this rail trail plan. And again, would reiterate that we're trying to get away from silo work, and that's my concern is working with folks who you know, before that other work at the county level has been undertaken yet.
Thanks, Carol. I guess that's one of the things that I wanted to say, that signage is one of the aspects of the work that the working group is going to be doing that we haven't looked at yet. And it's my thinking that we might have to reach that point where we're discussing signage as in a broader perspective. I'm a little bit concerned about supporting an individual application at this point in time. Councillor Moffat.
Thank you. And excuse me, don't forget that signage was identified a couple of years ago when we did the community exchange program. And I believe that has also been folded into the destination management plan. So again, nothing is new. It's just a matter of, we've touched on a lot of these things before. The work for the rail trail has been many years in the making. So Jane's work has sort of consolidated and brought some more details to it. But it still, in my opinion, still lives in and amongst other documents that we have. The destination management plan is meant to take those various documents off of shelves again, and as I said, and consolidate them into a go forward plan for the entire community, developing the community, not just for tourism, but for, the entire community as a whole and its various parts and pieces.
So other members of council, thoughts on the request to support an application for creation of a signage, sorry, I forget the word that you used, kiosk. Councillor DeVoe and then Councillor Roberts.
Yeah, I mean, the good work that's done here can dovetail with the initiatives that's coming both from the committee at the county and obviously with our tourism director and a new economic director. So all is not lost. The kiosk as a standalone, whatever, seems like a great idea. And if we can facilitate that in the near term, meaning in 2021, in my mind, the other elements of it and where we go with that, I think need to be considered by both the two senior staff at the county will have, and much of what the legwork that they've done here can be very foundational in what we could do with the whole rail trail as we go forward. So I kind of tease those apart. The notion of the kiosk and signage, I'm not adverse. I would love this with the supporting documentation to create a huge, bunch of information to go forward with what we do, as well as the involvement of the other stakeholders that are involved with this asset as well.
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Warden. So because we don't actually have that application, we're just looking at your letter, Pamela, for support. I'm wondering if, I'm sort of leaning to the side of yes, let's support this. However, it would be if it's on county property, if successful, and if the Rotary Club, et cetera, if and we go down that road, but it's a asset, then a physical asset on county property, we should have some say in it, exactly like location and size, et cetera, all of that. So I don't know how we put in the language that we would support it, but with county, you need county approval. I'm trying to find the right words for that. I think it would be a missed opportunity if we didn't support this now, but I'd like to make sure that we have some control. It's on our property.
Councillor Moffat.
Yeah, I mean, I would concur. I think it's information, historical wayfinding kiosks were noted in the 2010, whenever it was. This again, not a new idea. If this can move this ahead, it has to be similar to what Andrea is saying. It has to be built into the bigger picture. So sure, could the Rotary Club put up something? Sure, but it's not going to be what the Rotary Club and Friends of the Rail Trail want. It's what fits into the bigger picture on municipal property, in consideration of many previous conversations about what it should be and what it's meant to do, which in itself is one piece of a bigger puzzle, because there's meant to be other wayfinding points, other signage, and they should all be the same. So sure, we could put up the Rotary Club offer is generous, and they're known for good work like that. Could we do it this year? Sure, but again, it's a standalone project, and I can see that either way. So I think it still needs to be folded into the bigger picture myself.
Madam Chair, could I make a point for clarification, please?
Sure.
Okay. The next HCDC grant application, which I was willing to forward to Amanda, but I was told that the process was to bring it to council first, and then it would follow up through that back channel. So I'm sorry if I got that wrong. However, it's a community engagement process. That's what we're applying for funding assistance about. So it would be to help the people that are, I don't know if you realize, but between that parking lot and downtown Haliburton Village, there's a series of, there's an embankment that has, it's kind of an unnamed path that goes through a wetland and then along beside the high school playing field, kind of comes to a complete stop at a sidewalk where the jet is standing, and you don't know what to do. You don't know if it continues across the highway. It's really, really confusing. It's really unsafe. People try to cross not at the sidewalk crosswalk. So that's what this is all about, to during this upcoming trail season, to take people on a walkabout in the same way that Sue Shikazi does with active transportation plans, to actually walk the route between the parking lot, the Rails End Gallery, that, you know, the two parking lots, the one at the boat launch and the one out on County Road 1, and just ask people, what do you see here? What's needed? We would not be making, Friends of the Rail Trail would not be making any determinations about what information to put on a kiosk or on a sign. It's all about community engagement. Our role would be to facilitate the collaborative process, to bring all the players together so that we can then come up with a plan, you know, maybe by the end of the season. So that's all we're asking for.
Councillor Roberts.
So just for clarification, again, because I don't see the grant, so it's very hard to know. I still don't understand from your letter that was included in our package exactly what you're asking for. It's just the creation of the plan. It's not to build actually anything.
The project is community engagement. It's facilitating bringing collaborative partners together. So it's not, they'll be, at the end of it, there'll be suggestions, you know, like a point by point list. Here's what you can do. And all the collaborative partners, that'd be Dysart that owns the boardwalk, presumably, the county, the high school, every active transportation committees in town, everyone will, the health unit, everyone will have an opportunity to have input.
Oh, okay. So for clarification, it's for a plan. It's
No,
not for.
It's for a
Okay.
community engagement process.
Yeah, that wasn't clear to me at all. So thanks.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay, what I'm thinking now, and correct me if I'm wrong, council members. Yeah, I think that what we need to do is first receive all of the rest of the information that we have not seen so far. It would help us with our thinking. To defer any letter of support to the HCDC grant until we've actually seen the application, and ask that the working group meet post haste to take a look at this and make a recommendation back to council. Councillor Moffat.
Thank you. And I think that's a good idea because, you know, we're the rail trail working group. It's just a working group. We're just trying to, the rail trail plan is a bit loosey-goosey. It's full of coulds and shoulds and suggestions that have either long since been rejected, discarded, or completed, or reformulated. So we want to get the language up to date. If this work can take a piece of that job away and get it done, that's great. But I think that we need to see the full Monty, as it were. We need to see the other. We need to see the other pieces to know where it fits. Because again, I have no interest in giving, you know, approval to something that could inadvertently end up being a silo project. So let's see how it fits in. If it works for this year, then great. That's one more step ahead. You know, the engagement part, you know, we have taken on Bang the Table as an engagement platform for county work that could possibly be made available. I'd like to know more about what that engagement process is going to look like. You know, what platform, what tools, and that it can't just be, yes, we'll support you to go and get money to do a thing. and then get invited to the table at the other end. There has to be a little more involvement in that process. So
Totally agree.
and so I would like to see the other documentation first. There's a lot of time and effort gone into the rail trail, lots of controversy, lots of divisive issues and concerns around how it should, might, and could be used. And we want to take the time to get it right. So thank you.
Great.
So at this point, I'd like to thank you both for all the work that you've done. I mean, this is, I really do look forward to seeing the rest of the information. I would ask for a resolution to receive the report, and we will defer discussions to the Rail Trail Working Group. One question for Pamela, is there a specific timeline within which HCDC must receive their applications?
The committee meets, I am told, on April 8th.
And is that a one-time?
Yes, that's when they determine who gets the grants.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's unfortunate that we don't have a little bit more lead time and the information that we need to, it does kind of push us into a bit of a corner. Any thoughts from council on that, or should we just at this point receive the information? Councillor DeVolen, Councillor Moffat.
Yeah, we should, the timing's unfortunate, but we should receive the information and have it reported back and have the information in its entirety.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Moffat. Can I have a mover and a seconder for a resolution then to receive this report? Councillor Roberts and Councillor DeVolen.
Could I ask for clarification? So is the resolution then just to receive the report, and do you want any reference made to the direction to refer or request the full report and have it referred to the working group?
Yes, please. I think that should be included.
So here's, be it resolved that Haliburton County Council receives for information the Haliburton County Rail Trail Linear Park 2020 project delegation from Jane McCulloch and Pamela Marsails on behalf of the Friends of the Rail Trail, and that for it be requested to provide the full report with appendices to be reviewed by the Rail Trail Working Group of County Council.
All in favor? Carried. Thanks again, ladies, for all your work and your passion.
Great, thank you.
Okay, we will move on to the Haliburton County service providers. We have Mark Cox and Stephanie McLaren here today to talk to us about the work that the service providers are doing.
Good morning, everyone. We got cast into the ether there, so I don't know where. I presume we were introduced.
Yes, you were.
Okay, great.
So take it away.
All right, thank you. And thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you this morning. I'm Stephanie McLaren. I'm the Vice President of Community Programs at Haliburton Highlands Health Services. And Marg Cox, I know, is a very familiar face to you all as the Executive Director of Point in Time. We're not here today necessarily representing our own organizations, but we are here as the voice of a group of collaborators in the community known as the Haliburton County Service Providers Network. And we're here to share some information about who we are and what we've been up to, particularly during the COVID period. And we have a very soft ask, I would say, at the end of our presentation. So next slide, please.
Soft but clear.
Soft but clear, exactly. So the Haliburton County Service Providers Network has existed for at least 20 years. We tried to poach some of the historical memory here, but we know it's been at least 20 years. We are a group of social, health, and support service providers and community groups who operate and deliver services in Haliburton County. Membership has certainly fluctuated over the past 20 years as the areas of focus have shifted, areas of focus and advocacy have shifted depending on where gaps of service have been identified in the community. But once COVID-19 was declared, to be a global pandemic, we quickly activated the network to start to focus on our collective response. And I want to say what a gift it was as a health service provider in the community and member of this network to have the network at the ready, because we came to the table initially as the network, but also as a group of individuals who, in our own ways, were leaders in the community and were faced with an enormity of uncertainty and fear on our own parts. So to have this collegial and collaborative network to work with was quite a gift. And we certainly, in our initial meeting, I would say our initial meetings really exacerbated our sense of overwhelm as we started to hear the collective experience and concerns of the client populations that we serve. And we saw, the anxiety, being funneled and reflected in a very early increase in domestic violence, substance use, the lack of school, which often provides a touch point for for youth and service providers, and also some structure and the ability to be outside of perhaps dysfunctional family environments. And even early questions on where would people that were precariously housed or underhoused or homeless, where would they self-isolate if need be? So the magnitude of, we were focusing and functioning in such an unknown environment as we all were, but how were we going to support the clients and community that we serve? So we were meeting weekly to begin with, then bi-weekly, and now we meet monthly. So next slide, please.
I would just add to what Stephanie had said in the long list of what we were seeing in the community. I would just add a tsunami of mental health needs.
Absolutely. Absolutely pervasive. Thank you for that, Mark. So this is a rather exhaustive list of the members that have been attending our meetings. And it's in terms of sectors that are represented, we've got housing, employment, mental health, child and youth services, healthcare, social services, seniors care. We're quite well represented at the table. Next slide, please. So the challenges have been many, but we identified, as Marg mentioned, I think at the base of most of what we're seeing, we were most concerned with mental health, but COVID-19 has certainly exacerbated the impact of social determinants of health in our rural community. And that includes poverty, mental health, access to services, education and employment, housing.
And addictions.
And addictions.
Substance use, yeah.
And in terms of connectivity, again, that was so much of our society shifted to virtual, whether it was accessing really any kind of, all service providers had to learn how to pivot, so to speak, the new COVID language, pivot to figure out how to serve people in a socially distant way, and connect, and virtual supports were certainly at the forefront. And we found pardon?
And this is where I'd like to take the opportunity to thank County Council for making a large contribution to our connectivity campaign for children and youth in Haliburton County.
Thank you. We also saw a respite being a huge need in our community. We already were working with stretched resources, and this is across the entire lifespan, from child and youth, higher needs, children and youth, to right to seniors and to palliative care. The lack of respite and personal support work that's available in our community, it's not unknown to us, but it was certainly exacerbated during COVID, and we saw an awful lot of caregiver stress and burnout due to the demands of COVID placed on us as a community. Food security as well, certainly something that touches deep to the heart of this community. I know there's lots of initiatives and organizations addressing food security, and they certainly rallied during COVID to ensure that we got as much food to people in need in our community as possible. Next slide, please. So this is speaking to Mark's preemptive comment, and thank you. But some of the work, I just wanted to highlight that this is not at all meant to be an exhaustive list of what we as individual organizations have done to respond to COVID, but more highlight some of the work that we have done collaboratively as a network to respond. And that certainly at the forefront of our attention has been the Connectivity Initiative. And I know you're very familiar with that. We are coming together to talk about respite. And this is one of the advantages. We as much as we try not to work in silos, I think that the Service Providers Network and the burning platform of COVID-19 really put organizations together that may not topically come together. So child and youth services and senior services, mutually identifying that there's a need to collaborate and maybe craft a business plan or a plan for moving forward to serve the mutual interests of the people that we serve. So respite is high on our list of topics to address at this point. And food security. We had United Way join they were a new member during COVID. United Way City of Kawartha Lakes came to our table and worked with us to ensure that we were able to enhance the food sources that we as organizations had. So this was through our Meals on Wheels program, which serves seniors and people with disabilities. We brought fresh produce up from the garden, the big garden that United Way has. Bags and bags, van loads of fresh produce that were distributed throughout the community.
I jokingly teased them that there was more manure down there that way.
Okay, next slide, please. And we're always at the forefront of our mind. We're initiatives to support. Also, I just want to add housing and transportation. So we did buttress some of the emergency housing supports that were available in the community, as I spoke to earlier. So how would people self-isolate that needed to? We certainly saw an increase in the need for emergency housing for all the reasons that I just highlighted, and certainly a lack of availability of emergency housing. We had this shelter in Lindsay, a place called Home, was dealing with renovations and relocation. And locally, we tend to rely a lot on the motel system, which was stretched and the resources were not readily available, but eventually we were able to leverage them. So, and I want to highlight that before I address these particular issues, I think one of the best things that we did at this table was we really came to the table as collaborators. So when any of our sectors, and there was lots of streams of funding that came to us variously because of the sectors that we operate in, but we brought those funding opportunities to the table to talk about what is the specific need for our community and how we can make this function outside of our silos so that we can really address those social determinants to the best of our ability. So some other actions that we took, within 5 days, we were able to create the Haliburton Cares website. And this was, I want to thank Mark and Point in Time that they had a fledgling website in development that we repurposed, that they donated to us to repurpose immediately to be that touch point called Haliburton Cares, which was the central online location for community-related information where we could update what we as agencies were doing, had available for people to support during COVID.
And I would add that Stephanie's organization stepped up to upload the information, but also to provide a phone call, an live answering service so that people that didn't have access to connectivity or preferred to could get the information by phone, by phoning one number.
We really tried to be that one central place to have that people could connect with, and we had phenomenal response, I would say. We're very pleased with the way that it did resonate with the community. And then we had a contingent of volunteers that rallied when we were, if you remember the early days of COVID, PPE, personal protective equipment, masks, face shields, all of that were not readily available, and there was a real shortage nationally in terms of our access. And Search led the way, partnered with the HHS Foundation, and made sure that the homemade fabric masks at least were available in our community at various touch points, including emergency rooms and various community locations. And that was an overwhelming response, I would say. A lot of people wanted to make a contribution. And we've since been advocating, as we recognize that many of our nonprofit and charitable sector partners have been hit hard. Their fundraising abilities have been impacted significantly during COVID. So we've been advocating to the federal government for further supports for the nonprofit and charitable sector as we move forward into this era of recovery and rebuild. Next slide, please. So in the spirit, I've heard a lot in the previous presentation also about the value of collaboration and certainly not working in silos. And I just wanted to put a few points of what we've really seen come to life in the Service Providers Network as learnings and key enablers of success that we would like to carry forward into that recovery and resiliency period that we're facing now. And that is working in a strong container of collaboration and trust, including bringing funding opportunities to the table that ordinarily we might keep rather cloistered in our organizational context. Working in an emergent and nimble fashion. We have a very emergent and nimble fashion, probably more so than any group I've ever worked with, which is really great for an opportunity for all of us to just bring to the table what's up right now, with some ongoing pieces that we follow up on, but it's very lacking bureaucracy, I would say, which has allowed us to be very nimble. And the working outside of our traditional scope and organizational mandate, and I never hesitate to make fun of the fact that Marg has been instrumental in leading our connectivity initiative, and with such great success.
Despite not knowing how to use a computer herself.
So we
not
really
quite true, but yeah.
Yeah. So we have focused on coming to the table with resources to really address issues as opposed to stay in our silos. And engaging in broader system transformations discussions together. And some of this is around the Ontario Health Team health system transformation. And we're hoping to be a part of further conversations in partnership with you folks.
Hey, can I jump in for a minute, Steph? Or
yeah.
Am I interrupting your flow?
Oh.
I guess what we're really saying is that we know that there have always been some upsides to COVID. There's a lot of downsides as well, and we know our community has really been struggling. But I think on a very positive note, it's allowed people to park their traditional boundaries or competitivity at the door and roll their sleeves up and figure out how to work together, whether it's bringing their funding and resources, whether they be volunteers, whether they be staff, whether they be funding to the table to figure out what can we best do to serve Haliburton County, who needs it more than ever at this time. And having people at the table with enough power within their organizations to help create change has meant, that we've been able to get families who are living rough housed, which has really made a huge difference to the family. And by being able for Stephanie to bring resources to the table to support people being able to be put up in temporary accommodations in local motels has meant that people have had an opportunity to stay in Haliburton County who would have traditionally only accessed those safe services by moving down to City of Kawartha Lakes. So it really has been transformative. And I think what we're here to say is that we know that we play an important part, as do many organizations, in the health of Haliburton County residents. And we'd like to figure out how to work together to leverage that. And again, to the previous presentations, in an integrative kind of way.
Thank you. And that's a wonderful preempt to the next slide, please, which is the recovery and resiliency. And I absolutely know that I said it before Justin Trudeau, that I do see that there's an opportunity for us to build back better, and certainly leveraging the strong voice that we have as collaborators at the service provider table, but also the fact that we're very much in touch with the voices of the clients that we serve, who are the most vulnerable in our community. We have looked at other models in other jurisdictions in terms of how service providers have been involved in community pandemic recovery task forces, for example, like the City of Kawartha Lakes. And what we really, as a table, connected with is, well, to be frank, I don't see that there's a need to hem ourselves in with too much bureaucracy. We're looking for engagement, and we're looking for participatory processes where we can contribute what we know and ensure that the voices of who we serve are present. And we really landed on, in that conversation, knowing that the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan is in its early days, and that genuinely see that as a tremendous opportunity for us to enhance the collaboration that we have in that broader context, and to be a strong voice for service providers and clients in the community. So that is the soft landing to the ask at the end. Mark, did you want to add anything at this point?
No, just thanks very much for your time, and we'd be happy to take questions.
Yes.
Well, I'd really like to thank you both. You know, we've all seen challenges in the last year that none of us ever anticipated, and anomalies in behavior from unexpected people and places. It's the work that you've done has really been extraordinary in helping us to maintain stability, and we can't say enough about that. I know that Carol's going to have some comments to make about the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, and we really do look forward to your membership being partners or stakeholders in that process that is, you know, soon to get underway. So I'd look to questions or comments from council, and we'll start with Carol.
Thank you. You were right about that. Yes, thank you, ladies. This is really good news. The one-stop resourcing is vital. Excuse me. And this collaborative work, there's no question it will go a long, long way to setting the table for the development of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. And it will be incredibly beneficial that the people who have to work together under the legislated process already know each other, are working together, and have seen success. So if that is your ask, I think it's already underway, I would think.
Great.
So the consultants are about to embark on all of that.
Yay, great.
Councillor de Vollen?
Yeah, a couple things. Obviously, a lot of great organizations within our community during COVID that are trying to help out, and we appreciate that. But back to, you've made some mention of silos. As a member of the Haliburton Kawartha Lakes Poverty Reduction Roundtable and the JAC committee through the City of Kawartha Lakes with the human resources, I see some redundancies and overlap. So I'm confused to say the least. I think that as we move forward, as Councillor Moffat had said, with our community safety and well-being, there's a lot of these things that are going to be legislatively stitched. But I would say that in this shape and form, after 6 years and sitting on a couple levels of government and lots of committees, this is the first time that you've come to me like this. I'm thankful for the work that's done and the collaboration, but to having, you know, our third declaration in Minden Hills in less than 6 years, I'm a bit confused. And anyways, my hope is that the good work continues, that with through community safety and well-being, this will morph into a more integrated one-stop process, so that all of these good efforts and the great people that you all represent don't end up at cross purposes or not totally aware of what are going on with others. So anyway, thank you for your presentation today. And I'm only partially aware of some of the good work that you've done in the past year with COVID. So thank you.
So could I respond to that?
Sure.
I don't want to try and get into a lot of details, but certainly the coordinator of the Poverty Reduction Roundtable, Rachel, sits as a member of our Haliburton Service Provider Table, and I do as well as co-chair. And I think that there are some differing mandates, and I think that as Haliburton service providers, certainly we do a smaller amount of advocacy and policy work, but it's been more about rolling up our sleeves and trying to figure out on the ground how to improve the circumstances for people and systems locally. And the poverty reduction table, I would say, has a much broader mandate, dealing with things at a policy level and the integration between the county and the city of Kawartha Lakes.
Councillor Moffat.
Thank you again. Yeah, it's my hope that from what I understand with work on the safety and well-being plan process, that because it is legislated by the province and it is owned and operated by the municipalities, which in itself is weird because a lot of the organizations that have to be at the table don't report down to municipalities, they report up to the province. So everybody has to acknowledge that there's going to be some shape shifting here, and some traditional travel patterns and reporting patterns may have to be, excuse me, realigned in the best interest of the community. And we don't want to lose track of the good work that this group has done just because it is legislated to get folded into what appears to be an upside down sort of authority structure. So I think that we stand ourselves in very good stead being a smaller community that has this work done, where the service providers all know each other, and we can build our own safety and well-being plan based on what our community needs. And you folks already know what we need. So everybody has to come to that table when that advisory committee is created, and for the work that will come from that, everybody's going to have to, you know, roll up their sleeves, leave their ego and their silo at the door, and bring, I don't say that negatively, it's human nature, and bring the best for Haliburton County to that table. We have a tremendous opportunity to custom build our own plan. And I think we're miles ahead in the work that's been done and the way the groups already work together. So I look forward to it.
Councillor Royale.
Yeah, I just want to take the opportunity, roughly about a year ago, I was getting telephone calls like crazy as to where do I get a mask? How do I make things happen? People were petrified and they couldn't get out. And the way that the group very quickly, very economically, innovatively put together that mask program was awesome. And I was able to pick up and deliver roughly about somewhere between 24 and 36 of them. And it wasn't the fact that they got the masks, it's the creativity that went into making them. The way they looked, the colorization. Not only did it make the people feel happy that they were having protection, but it brought a twinkle to their eye in the way that they were able to wear them and felt good about something being different. So, you know, if what you're doing is going to bring more of that kind of stuff, God, keep doing it.
Really, thank you very much. And really hats off to Search for mobilizing. And one of the things that Gina Robertson says is it actually shows that people care, and people need that during COVID very much.
Well, I'd like to thank you both again. I know that we'll have lots of opportunity to have more discussions as we work together. And I would look for a mover and a seconder to receive this report. Councillor DeVolen and Councillor Moffat.
Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council receives for information the delegation from Mark Cox and Stephanie McLaren on behalf of the Service Providers Network in Haliburton County.
All in favor? Carried. Thanks again for everything that you do.
Thank you very much as well.
Okay, we will move on to approval of reports and recommendations from the Committee of the Whole. I think you've all seen the report. Are there any questions with respect to the recommendations? If I could have a mover and a seconder then. Councillor Kennedy, Councillor Moffat.
Moved by Councillor Kennedy, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Be it resolved that the recommendations from the March 10th, 2021 meeting of the Haliburton County Committee of the Whole be adopted by Haliburton County Council.
All in favor? Carried. Okay, now we'll move into some reports on planning and the environment. I think we'll be starting with Corey on her report on electric vehicle charging stations. Morning, Corey.
Good morning.
And good morning, Josie.
Good morning.
So today's report outlines some funding opportunities that the county and local municipalities can pursue for electric vehicle charging infrastructure. Installing charging infrastructure in the county is important both for the transition of our municipal light duty fleet to electric vehicles, but also to provide the public a place to charge their vehicle while outside of the home, either while running errands or for those passing through who may then eat at local restaurants or shop locally. The recommended charging stations for the county are level 2 dual port stations that are compatible with all electric vehicle types. Dual port stations are more economical than single port, since most of the costs are related to installation, equipment, and maintenance, and they're the same across both. Federal funding is distributed through the Natural Resources Canada's Zero Emission Vehicle Infrastructure Program. So this covers up to 50% of total project costs for a maximum of $5,000 per port. So there are two options that the county and local municipalities can proceed with under this funding. The first option is a turnkey approach, where the charging stations would be owned by Ontario Power Generation and Hydro One under the IV network. So they've already been awarded this federal funding, and there's room for us for up to 7 dual port charging stations. Under this option, there would be no upfront costs, but rather an annual service fee that covers the costs of equipment and installation, as well as ongoing operational costs such as maintenance and network operations. The only cost to the municipality would be electricity use, which can be recovered through charging a modest fee to the public who use the stations. The average annual fee based on stations that have been installed under this network so far is $3,300, although the cost varies depending on what is required for installation. There would be no commitment to proceed until site visits are conducted and municipalities are able to review the costs and contracts before entering into an agreement. Installation would take place for this option in the summer or fall of this year. For the second option, this would require the county or local municipalities to own the charging stations. So the owner would be whoever's property that it's on. The county has been included in a funding application for Hydro One for up to 9 dual port charging stations, and a funding decision is expected sometime this month. The supplier of the charging equipment would be selected through RFP and would also perform installation and ongoing operations. The costs of purchasing and installing a level 2 dual port station range between $15,000 to $25,000, with up to 50% of the cost reimbursed, so a maximum of $10,000. Ongoing service costs can range from $500 to $1,800 per year, depending on the scope of these services. And installation for this option would take place between fall of 2021 and 2023. To be eligible for funding, the stations must be located on municipal or county property. So suggested locations include the Arena and Township office in Minden Hills, with the township location being in partnership with the county and thus potentially having 2 stations at this location. The library and arena in Dysart, at one of the many locations on North Shore Road in Algonquin Highlands, and at the municipal office in Wilberforce. It is up to council whether you would like different locations or a greater or fewer number of locations. To proceed with either option, I'm looking today for council to decide which locations to proceed with, as well as the number of stations, and of course, which option is preferred. Thank you.
I've got a couple of questions and then we'll go to council. I just wanted to ask Corey to make sure that all of the lower tier municipalities have had an opportunity to include some amounts of funds in their budget for this year. I'm assuming that you've had discussions with them about this before they completed their budget process.
Yes, we did request that a climate change budget with the amount for at least 1 level 2 station was included in budgets, although I'm not sure that that made it to the final budget.
Okay, I also wonder, given the thought that these stations would be, in many cases for use for the public, for people that are going to restaurants or shops in the downtown areas, I'm kind of wondering, given the makeup of both Minden and Dysart, why there would be 2 in Minden and only 1 in Dysart, because I see the need as being similar. Now, I'm sure that that's something that Dysart may comment on or have some thoughts about. And I'm also wondering about the partnership between the county and Minden. I mean, acknowledging that we do have back-to-back properties, I'm wondering what the county, the county itself might consider an alternate location for their own purposes. I think that's something we need to discuss. Charlesie.
If I could, just to answer a few of your questions, with regards to the 2 locations or the 2 systems within the Minden County location, the rationale behind that would be the county has already purchased 1 plug-in vehicle and may be making a recommendation shortly for another. So if we were to park there, we would automatically be taking 2 of those during the day and then not on the weekend. And if Minden were to then also look at some of their fleet vehicles when they come to replacement to the electric, then they would need a dual station as well in the same location. So we thought 2 side by side and reduce the cost of the electrical hookup to 1 location, just having 2 charging stations side by side. And then in the weekends or after hours, it would be available to the public. That was really the only reason Minden had 2 versus Dysart having 1. And with regards to the budget process, through the working group, Corey did bring forward this item to municipal staff, identifying a approximate amount of money that would be required. And I did follow up with some of the CAOs with that regard. So they're aware, and depending on the option, that amount of money would be either significantly larger or not if you go with the yearly idea versus buying it outright. And with the timelines available, it could be included in the local municipal budgets for the next round of budget to still meet these timelines.
Okay, questions from council. Councillor DeVolen, then Councillor Moffat.
Thank you for bringing this forward. This metamorphosis, I'm a car junkie, so it's going to happen in the next couple of years faster than most people are foreseeing. My question, first one is, can we do them both? Can we own the ones that we're talking about and make money at the identified assets, and then approach Hydro One with this Ivy network at some of our other municipal assets? I'm just thinking in Minden Hills. I can think some other properties that we have that would geographically dot them across the region. So I guess I'm greedy in this. I think the need's coming, that we're going to need a lot more than this. It's a nice start, and I would be interested if we could do both.
So we do have 9 reserved under one program and 7 reserved on the other, and one station has 2 ports on each. So that's a lot of places to plug in. And I did get comments that even the amount we're suggesting is a lot for a rural area, but I do agree that it's coming and it's coming fast. So we do have both amounts reserved. So technically, yes.
Councillor Moffat.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions too. I appreciate Councillor DeVolen's comments, because in Algonquin Highlands, you know, we have talked about putting one in the North Shore strip there, because we would also like to move toward electric vehicles and be able to charge for staff, or charge up for staff vehicles. But we also have the airport, and we have Dorset. The village of Dorset is a very, very busy place. So we also have a number of opportunities and locations we'd like to look at. My question, and I just comment that Algonquin Highlands will be using modernization money for this. Is this a one-off to get it off the ground, or will this be an ongoing collaboration through the county and of course Corey herself or yourself? I'm not sure who I'm speaking to. So.
Yeah, if I can just comment, this federal funding goes until 2024, I believe, and there are more upcoming rounds. So this is not a one shot, but we also, it's a great opportunity to take advantage of while it's right here and reserved for us. But that being said, I don't think we have to do it all in one shot. Keep in mind future locations, and this could be sort of the first of many installations.
Go ahead.
And so to that then, does it make sense for us to, go with what Brent has said, or do we go back to staff and identify our plan collectively for the next couple of years? Do we say, let's do them all through both programs now if we can, or stagger it out? I guess that's a conversation for council to have.
Go ahead, Charlie.
And I would think that's a great conversation to have. And I'd throw out the idea that maybe you select one and see for, once they're installed, run them for a year and see what those actual maintenance costs are going to be. And then you can say, oh, this was great. Staff told us it'd be $1,800 and it was only $1,000 a year. Let's get 8 more. Or, oh my goodness, because of our location, it was actually $3,000 a year. Maybe we need to scale that back. So I would suggest that might be part of your conversation, to try it out and see what those costs actually will be.
Go ahead. Councillor Moffat.
Thank you. And speaking of costs, I did have a little sort of yellow flag when it talked about the trenching upgrades, if the panel's not up to snuff. I am married to a master electrician, so I'm aware that these costs can be quite substantial. Is there, or have the conversations been held about the requirements to support the port ahead of time, instead of getting the port and going, we don't have the stuff to do it? So do we all know that the panels and the locations where we are anticipating putting them are already up to speed? Otherwise, those could be substantial unknown costs going forward.
I'd just like to say for the first option, they come and do site visits. And then if the cost is too much because all this trenching is required, then you don't have to proceed with that option. So that's sort of one advantage of that first option is, picking those locations that are maybe more economical as well.
Thank you.
Councillor Roberts.
Yes, thank you. We at Dysart have been talking about this for quite a long time and wanting to have some electric vehicle charging stations in Dysart, but we were never really able to do this on our own financially. So some kind of grant program, partnership program, this would be fabulous. And I totally agree that like the time is now to start working on something like this. But when we've talked about it, and Councillor Kennedy will know that within our own committee groups, there's been talk of should they be free or should they be this? And then what if someone only needs 2 hours to charge, but they've decided to plug there for the day. So we put one at the arena and they park there for the day when they only need like 2 hours of charge. So like, do you have a time limit that somebody can plug, and do all lower tiers agree that we are going to charge that moderate fee? Because it can't be free. There has to be some, I think there has to be some cost to it. So maybe that's a bunch of questions. I don't know.
Go ahead, Corey.
Yeah, just to add to that, it is nice to provide it for free for a great incentive for the public to use them, but the advantage of an hourly fee is that it does incentivize people to move their vehicle. So that's why I would recommend that. And whichever service provider we work with them to sort of set a fee in line with market rates and set up the online system that we can control. We can block off certain times for municipal use only, and then people can see that through an app. So all of this can be managed, yeah.
Councillor Royale, you have a question?
Yeah, just make a comment on how some of the larger urban areas, obviously, where they've got many more of these. A lot of them are located in shopping malls. And what a lot of the stores have done is they've gone through a rewards program. So if you go in and you spend $50 in my store, I will give you a voucher that will give you 1 hour of free charging at your whatever facility that might be. That doesn't cover the cost of putting it there, but it does address the issue of should there or should not be a charge and how that charge could be done. So you could talk to the private sector, BIAs and things like that, where it might be advantageous for them to look at it and say, hey, we want you guys to come downtown. So you got your electric car, park in this parking lot and spend some money with us and we'll help you out.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Councillor Schell, did you have a question?
Oh, I was just going to say that I agree with there being a fee associated, and even if it's just something that makes it a wash as far as what the hydro cost would be to each municipality. I mean, nobody's paying for my gas for me to drive around. So, when you're charging, for example, at the community center in Minden, somebody has to pay for that, and I don't think that should necessarily go across the whole tax base when it could be a fee per use service.
So I'm looking for thoughts on which option you think we should go with, or do you see this as requiring individual conversations at the lower tiers before we can make a decision? And is there a timeline on exactly when we have to go forward with this, Corey?
So, I mean, both options are different because one, we don't know if the funding's quite there yet. So hopefully we'll find out in a week or so. And the other one is because municipalities have sort of withdrawn from their funding application, and so we can get in on those. So I would say the sooner the better, so that we maybe don't miss that opportunity, but there's not necessarily a firm deadline right now.
Okay, thoughts from council on the options or how you'd like to proceed. Councillor Kennedy?
Thank you. Just a bit of clarification. This is something that I've been lobbying for at our lower tier for a couple of years. So great to see it moving forward. I'm just a little confused here about 9 stations and 7 stations. So is the 9 station the county one, and that's fully paid for other than the annual maintenance cost? Is that correct? And then, or is the other one where there's 7 dual port stations, or if I got it backwards? I'm not too sure. If you could just clarify that for me. Thanks.
So this is just how many are reserved for us. We can go with 5, we can go with the 9 for one or 7 for the other. In the table in my report with the suggested locations, that's 7. So it's per station, and then they each have 2 ports. That's sort of what makes it confusing. So with each option, that's just how many are reserved for us currently.
Okay. And how are those sites arrived at? Just questioning the library rather than the Welcome Center.
So that was discussions with the climate change working group. So with the municipal staff on that group, and some of them went back and talked to public works directors, etc.
Okay.
Councillor Moffat.
To Councillor Kennedy's question, because I can read his face, I would think that if the people around this table have a different idea of where their stations should go, then that's part of the conversation as well.
Go ahead, Charlesie.
So, and I was going to say, just to add to Corey's comment, read the 9 and the 7. You know, if County Council wanted to take all 9, then by all means we could do that and do the locals the next time. We had just thought it would be nice if each, so all 5 had 1, and then as we said before, the 2 in Minden, because 1 would be Minden and Haliburton. It is entirely up to County Council how you would like to proceed and where, because we did have that conversation about the libraries, because we have library in Wilberforce as well. And so would those be better locations? Tell us your thoughts, and we're happy to have that discussion.
Councillor Moffat, then Councillor DeVolen.
I think they have to be located where they can be of the most use to the most people. And that is, you know, public places that are a little more populous or have other things to do, so that someone isn't plugging in and then sitting there and, you know, just looking at the clock. The whole idea is to provide a convenience factor to a certain extent, so you can be charging your vehicle and then be out and about doing other things. And to the changing topics, I think that we should go with the locations as noted now and have a plan to do more going forward, and we should own them ourselves. There.
Thoughts from other members of council on that, because we do need to land on an option. Councillor DeVolen.
Yeah, I mean, philosophically, for us to own them, I like that approach. So that to get this started, to proceed, is a great idea. For Minden, one's downtown and one's at our new community center, so they're 2 logical places within our built-up urban area, so that I don't have a problem. And I know that there's sufficient power available, because we've talked about it before in both of those areas, so it's not problematic for us. The Hydro one, is there any time frame in terms of the intakes that relates to that, Corey, or is that the one that will have multiple intakes up to 2024, given what we already know? Just so the timing of that particular one, the option one, if we get launched and own our own and find out what they do and don't do, the costs and the maintenance and all that, when does the window close on the Hydro One IV network, or will there be multiple opportunities to get in on that?
Oh, sorry. So they're both Hydro One. Technically, one's the joint with OPG. So this is the option 1 you're asking about. The timeline.
Doesn't make any difference then, because it's basically they're going through the same grant funding portal.
Well, so in that instance, they've already been allocated the funding, and we're taking advantage of people who have dropped out. So it doesn't have the firm deadlines as the second one, but that's new funding that they still are awaiting the answer for. So that's why it's a little more gray. We're like sort of getting in there now when the funding's already been allocated.
Councillor Royale, and then Councillor Roberts.
Again, we're talking in our infancy right now, because again, we don't have any installed, but I'm going to assume for the sake of argument that at some point in time, our fleet, that is the county fleet and the various municipal fleets, are going to grow, and they're going to need more than 1 or 2 allocations. And so consequently, we can't have the public more or less plugged into the ones that are physically need. On the other hand, there needs to be some public ones. So what I'm wondering is just what Councillor DeVolen was saying. Could it be possible for us to start by buying our own and then look at expanding it to the Hydro One option for the ones that the public could use? Then that puts us in a position to be able to to be able to do both, or am I missing something?
It's my impression that we're not looking for something for sole use by a municipal entity at this point in time. They're kind of joint use. Councillor Roberts, you had a question?
I did, and I don't know if any of you, thank you, Warden, other councillors, every once in a while something on the agenda comes along that I just think like I must be not getting something. So, because if we go with option 1, there's no upfront costs, correct? So if we go with option 2, there are costs to the municipalities, which means to the local municipalities, so to Dysart. So I don't feel like I can make that decision today, because how do Dysart Council has not, I actually yesterday in my mayor's message at the beginning of our meeting said, please watch this portion. So I hope all Dysart councillors are watching right now. But I don't feel that I can commit Dysart Council to funding when I haven't taken it to my council. So I feel like I'm dumb right now, but otherwise then I could definitely go with option 1 today because there's no upfront costs. But I concur with Councillor Moffat, in the long run of things, this is not just a whim. This is not for today. This is for like 20 years from now. This is the way we're going to go. So it makes, I always like to be in control of an asset that's sitting on a municipal property. So I prefer option 2. I just don't know how I can make that decision today without having conferred with my council.
And therein lies my struggle as well. Councillor Moffat?
Just to make it even more confusing, I don't disagree with Councillor Roberts at all. We've got 2 options and we have 4 councils. That's a whole different conversation about that. And so what happens if it comes back 2 and 2? Like, how do we ensure that we're not farther ahead, or does it matter? Because that's a very good point, Andrea, is you take it back and people could say, it could come back split.
Yeah. Charlesy, I'm sorry, I should have acknowledged your hand before.
No, that's fine. So my suggestion, understanding both positions and knowing some municipalities have put some money aside and some we're looking to do it in the next budget round, is county council could provide direction to move forward with both. And if Dysart and Algonquin Highlands wanted to go with option A, we'll only get 3 for option A. And if Minden in the county and Highlands East wanted to go with option B, we get 5 for option B. That way we'll still hold all those spots. So if everybody flows into one of them, we have them all. That would be my recommendation. And then we as the county can back out from what we've held.
Thank you.
If I, just for a follow-up, yes, thank you. I feel so much better. I thought I didn't understand. So
that sounds like a perfectly reasonable approach, and obviously we all need to encourage discussion at the lower tiers as quickly as we possibly can, so we can move forward with this. Are we in agreement with Charles's recommendation? For now, we'll have more discussions about this.
Charles, repeat that for me?
I absolutely can. So if county council would like to direct staff to hold or keep our reservation that we currently have in both options, so option A and option B, and staff will commit to providing these 2 options to each of the local municipal councils. And then the locals can provide us a resolution as to the Township of Algonquin Highlands would like to move forward with option X. We'll pull those together and then we'll see where we land.
And that would also give us an opportunity when we have discussions at the lower tiers to say, but we would like a different location, or we would like maybe an additional station.
And I believe with the number of spaces Corey has held, or I call them spaces, number of stations that Corey has held, there is some wiggle room. So if, Dysart wanted the arena and the library, we could have that conversation as well.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. I know this, I'm glad to see that we've had this discussion. I had so many questions when I finished reading the report. I'm sure you all did. And there's different, different options that we can go with. in the meantime, it is an exciting direction for us to be taking, that's for sure. Councillor Moffat?
Can someone remind me of the conversation we've already had about timelines? Algonquin Highlands Council is, of course, every 2 weeks, but it's next week. And do I need to get it on that agenda, or do we have some room there? I can't remember what the answer to that was.
Looking to Corey or Charlesy.
So I believe the report is already complete because as you see it today. So for Corey to forward that to your clerk's department, it'll just be, can we get it on or not? So maybe Mayor Moffat might want to have a conversation. So that's entirely up to your local process. Yes, correct.
Okay, so have you finished with a resolution, Mr. Clerk?
I think so. I think I'm a little thick on this one as well. So, but if you have a mover and a seconder, or do you want me to read it in advance?
Let's hear it in advance, just so everybody knows what they're moving.
Be it resolved that the March 24th, 2021 staff report on electric vehicle charging stations be received for information by Haliburton County Council, and that Haliburton County Council direct staff to keep our reserved allocation in both programs outlined in the report, and that staff provide the available options to local municipalities who can inform a final decision at a later date.
Could I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor DeVolen, Councillor Moffat, and an all in favor. Carried. Thank you so much. This is an exciting step for us to be taking. So next, we'll be looking at the contract renewal for forestry services. If you want to speak to that, Charlie.
Thank you very much. I will. So this report is bringing forward a contract renewal. Kestrel Forestry provides a number of different services to the County of Haliburton on a contract basis. So they do the rail trail corridor. They do some bylaw enforcement there, as well as bylaw enforcement for the existing shoreline tree preservation bylaw. And their staff are identified as the county weed inspector under the Weed Control Act, because the municipality is required to identify someone for that purpose. And we make that service available not just to the county, but to each of the local municipalities as well. So if you need a weed inspector, we provide that service on the local municipality's behalf. So each year we bring forward a renewal suggestion, and this year, the rate increase is 0% over last year, so the same costs associated, and the amount has been budgeted in the 2021 budget for this service. So I'm happy to answer any questions. There's no change in the language or the wording of the contract other than adding 2021.
I would have two questions. One, in the past, I think we've had Kestrel come and make a presentation to council to kind of cover off the work that they've done in a previous year. I'd like to know if council's interested in hearing that at some point going forward. And second, just looking at the contract, I see that there's a maximum number of hours. And I'm wondering if the 15 hours a week is or will become a bit limiting. And whether it's maybe too soon to be talking about that. Go ahead.
So yes, James regularly, except for last year, would come in April to speak to County Council about the previous year. And I'm happy to set that up by Zoom should Council wish. We can definitely do that. And it may be too soon to have that conversation, but I would agree 15 hours would be limiting. But again, it would depend on other staffing choices that council may make in the future.
Okay. Questions? Councillor Roberts?
Yeah, I would support having him come to do a council presentation. It doesn't matter to me what month, but throughout the whole shoreline bylaw process to date, there have often been some comments as well. They don't even, look after their own tree cutting bylaw. So it would be helpful to have him come as a presentation and with statistics and how many people, how many complaints and all of that let people know that we are following our bylaw and there's a process.
Any other comments or questions? Could I have a mover and a seconder to renew the contract as it stands for now? Councillor Burton, Councillor Kennedy.
Moved by Councillor Burton, seconded by Councillor Kennedy. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council receives for information the March 24th, 2021 staff report on renewal of a services contract with Kestrel Forestry, and that a bylaw be presented authorizing the warden and clerk to execute the agreement.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is the appointment of a deputy secretary treasurer to the Lands Division.
Thank you. So currently I am the appointed Deputy Secretary Treasurer to the Land Division Committee. So this would be in the case that our Secretary Treasurer, who is currently our planning technologist, maybe was ill or off on vacation, the deputy would step in so that the meeting could continue. It's similar to, you know, having a clerk and a deputy clerk for council meetings. And so with my departure, I recommend that the county still have someone in place in that position of Deputy Secretary Treasurer, just as backup in case there's an illness or vacation in the future. So this is my recommendation. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to do so.
Any questions on that? I was going to be cheeky and say, what, you're leaving? Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder to appoint the Deputy Secretary Treasurer? Councillor Roberts and Councillor Shell.
Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Shell. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council authorizes the appointment of Michelle Moore as the Deputy Secretary Treasurer for the Land Division Committee of the County of Haliburton, and directs that the appointment bylaw be presented to County Council for adoption.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, and the next item is a request for an extension on the subdivision draft. I think we've seen this before.
We have seen this before, and I'm also, you've heard this before, due to COVID, a number of, projects have been delayed, whether that is, getting agreements signed and in place. The applicant in this situation is developing a 17 unit residential subdivision in the township of Algonquin Highlands with 6 blocks as well. So in all, almost everything is complete. And unfortunately, it's just the legal paperwork has taken a little longer than anticipated due to last year. So it is the applicant's hope and our hope that this will be done in the next couple months. So we're just looking hopefully for an extension one last time from County Council for this subdivision.
Well, I would hope it would be one last time as well. It'd be nice to see this project completed and lots becoming available. So any questions or comments from council? Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder to authorize the extension? Councillor Moffat and Councillor DeVolen.
Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor DeVolen. Be it resolved that the March 24th, 2021 staff report on the request for extension of draft approval of a plan of subdivision, file number 46T91001, be received for information by Haliburton County Council, and that Haliburton County Council amends the approval of the draft plan of subdivision submitted by Greg Bishop for lands located in part of Lot 17, concessions 9 and 10, geographic township of Stanhope, now in the township of Algonquin Highlands, to extend the lapsing of draft approval to April 27th, 2021.
All in favor? That's carried. All right, next we will hear your planning department update.
So speaking of files from many years past, we finally have a decision on, I see 2 smiles on the screen. We finally have a decision. I'm hoping that I will be able to remove this last application. It's an application for consent, which was taken to the LPAT and Ontario Municipal Board back in 2017, 2018. In association, you'll remember, with an appeal of the Municipality of Dysart et al.'s official plan, as well as a zoning bylaw amendment, which was enacted to make this consent application take place. So it's supported, they all went hand in hand. And based on the 2 previous decisions, and then finally the decision from the LPAT on this consent, The county, as I've noted in my report here, felt that there were a number of costs that we incurred that were unnecessary, and all costs for defending files does eventually fall to the taxpayer. And so we made a motion to the LPAT to say these costs were extraordinary and we should be in some way reimbursed for, you know, the time and the legal and the expert witnesses that we had to have on hand. And so I provide as an attachment the summary of the final decision. I would like to note for County Council that it is very rare for a municipality to be awarded costs in these situations, as the municipalities are across Ontario are seen as always having funds to defend this, usually having professional staff on hand. And while the county, yes, we have, you know, a professional planner, we don't have a biologist or a limnologist or those other specialties, which we have to contract through our peer review agent. And that's a whole other process. So there's costs associated there as well. We don't have an in-house legal. So we had to have a legal assistance in the defense of this file. So it's, like I said, very rare, but we were successful in having a decision in our favor. We did not receive all the monies we asked for. We never expected to. I think it's the principle behind the decision. So if there's any questions on that, I'm happy to answer them, or I can move on.
Any questions? No, move on. Well done.
Thank you. So just land division update. There were 6 new consent applications after the previous 15 that we took in. So we're moving those along, and the next meeting will be April 12th for land division committee. And it will be the first meeting, just so those of you who are members of that committee, where Les Jagoda, our new planner, will be presenting the files. So we're excited to see how that rolls out. And then as Schedule A and Schedule B, just a status update on ongoing planning files and projects that the GIS department is working on as well.
Thank you.
Madam Warden, I just wanted to let you know we've lost Councillor Burton.
Okay, we will have a brief pause to see if he can reconnect. Councillor Roberts.
Just perhaps a suggestion. Is there a resolution needed to receive this planning report?
Yes.
And if so, we have quorum. Maybe we could receive that and perhaps take a break. It's almost 11. And through the break, maybe Councillor Burton's able to come back. Would that be possible, Warden?
Okay, sure. Are we within our ability to do that? I know that we've agreed to have a pause if someone's missing. I just want to get your thoughts on that, Mike.
Yeah, the procedural bylaw does say that sort of business will stop, but we can certainly take the break and then maybe consider the recommendation at that point.
Okay, we will break until 11 o'clock. Hopefully that will be sufficient. We're live?
Not just yet. We're back live, Warden Danielson.
Welcome back, everyone. If I could have a mover and a seconder to receive the planning department update. Councillor DeVolen, Councillor Moffat.
Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Be it resolved that the March 24th, 2021 staff report on planning department activities be received for information by Haliburton County Council.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up are administrative reports. The first is the correspondence listing. I would ask for a mover and a seconder to receive that unless anyone wishes to support the letter on the correspondence listing about joint and several liability. Councillor Kennedy?
Yes, I would like to put that on the table, that we offer a letter of support to, it's a common problem for everybody and needs a good vocal response.
Okay, other thoughts or comments? Councillor Roberts?
Sorry, quickly find my unmute. Yeah, I would agree. I would like to support this.
Yeah, despite promises that we hear every year to resolve this issue, it remains a problem that hangs over all of our heads in a rather costly way, I might say. And as the Wardens Caucus has made this, one of their issues that they want to keep a close eye on. So would the rest of council agree to send in a letter of support for that? I'm seeing nods. So if you could, I believe you might have a resolution that does support that.
We do. Moved by Councillor Kennedy, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council receives for information the March 10th, 2021 correspondence from the Corporation of the Municipality of Tweed, and further that a letter of support be forwarded on behalf of Haliburton County Council.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, if we could bring in Sil to talk about a couple of tender results. Good morning, Sil. We have your reports on both of these items. If you just want to touch on the highlights of them.
Sure, thank you. Good morning, Madam Warden and members of council. Essentially, I'll start with the hot mix report. Hot mix is primarily on high volume roads, and we have this year Road 3 from Highway 118 to just north of Blue Hawk Lake, and Road 7, Kinesis Lake, from the bridge in West Guilford to just about to Shane Circle, which is 0.7 of a kilometer, and Road 8 from Highway 35 to County Road 12, including the intersection as well. We received 3 bids, 3 tenders, one from Fowler Construction, one from Dufferin Construction, and one from Bonnechere Excavating. Staff are recommending to move forward with Fowler Construction bid, which was well below our budgeted amount. And some of the reasons why it was so low is we had good all around unit pricing. Everything within the tender, the unit costs were really, really good and below expectations, as well as some catch basin work as well that was reduced due to their conditions. So well within budget. We would like to move forward with having Fowler Construction do our hot mix tender this year.
Questions? Or that was a move to, okay. Seconder? Councillor Roberts?
If actually, mine was a question.
Sorry.
If we came in, I'm sorry, I wasn't jumping on the ball fast enough. If we were so below tender, is there an or what we budgeted, pardon me, is there an opportunity to expand the contract to equal what we put into our budget? Is there, we're doing like 0.7 a kilometer on County Road 7. Should we be doing a full kilometer there? I just want to question that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. The reason why we're doing just a 0.7 kilometer on County Road 7 is that we're tying into a previous job. So it's almost piecemealing, but it's just the closing in on sections that were skipped or not done lately.
So I guess I'm looking for a seconder for the resolution. Okay.
I'm sorry, I missed the mover, Warden.
The mover was Councillor DeVolen, the seconder, Councillor Roberts.
Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council received for information the March 24th, 2021 staff report on the rehabilitation and hot mix paving of select county roads, that the contract 2021-8-A be awarded to Fowler Construction Company Limited for the bid amount of $758,548.79 plus applicable taxes. And finally, that a bylaw be presented authorizing an agreement with Fowler Construction Company Limited for the rehabilitation and hot mix paving of sections of County Road 3, County Road 7, and County Road 8.
All in favor? Okay, that's carried. And next is the surface treatment tender.
Thank you for that. Yes, the surface treatment also is primarily applied on low volume roads. This year we have a single surface on County Road 5, which is South Baptiste Lake Road. And we're going to do the entire road from County Road 48 to the Hastings boundary. We have a middle section of County Road 10 from King Scott's south to just north of Silver Springs Cottages. And the far end of County Road 12 will finish the road off from Inspiration Drive north to Trouts Pond Road, as well as the middle section of County Road 13 from the bridge to Cage Road as well. It was a joint tender with Algonquin Highlands as well. And we received 4 bids, Miller Paving, Greenwood Paving, Duncor Enterprises, and Dufferin Construction. The low bid was assessed and Miller Paving was low bid. The county portion was below our budgeted amount. And staff are recommending to move forward with Miller Paving for this year's work.
Any questions? Could I have a mover and a seconder to move forward? Councillor Kennedy, Councillor Burton. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Kennedy, seconded by Councillor Burton. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council received for information the March 24th, 2021 staff report on the supply and application of surface treatment for select county roads, and that the contract 2021-9-A be awarded to Miller Paving Limited for the bid amount of $1,553,920 plus applicable taxes, subject to the Township of Algonquin Highlands Council approval for their portion of the overall tender amount. And finally, that a bylaw be presented authorizing an agreement with Miller Paving Limited for the supply and application of surface treatment.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sil. Okay, next up is a report on records management, a continuation. Will you be presenting this or are we bringing Michelle in?
I think we're bringing in our deputy clerk here, so just bear with us a second. Michelle, you're on.
Thank you, Mike.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Sorry, I'm just having a little problems with the computer here. My apologies. Good morning, Warden Danielson and members of Haliburton County Council. The staff report before council this morning provides the members with an overview as to where the county is at with our records management process and since adopting the TOMRIMS classification system in 2018. Today, staff are seeking council's approval to proceed with a records assessment that will provide a detailed review and analysis of our current record-keeping practices, identify any gaps, and make recommendations going forward. The assessment will also assist in planning for the implementation of an electronic document records solution should County Council wish to proceed with such a classification system. As noted in the staff report, staff are proposing that the funding for the records assessment be allocated from the modernization funding for small and rural municipalities.
Are there any questions on the report? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Moffat and Councillor Shell.
Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Shell. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council receives for information the March 24th, 2021 staff report on a current state assessment for the county's records management program, and that staff be directed to proceed with the records assessment utilizing the services of the information professionals. And finally, that the project be funded from the Ontario Service Modernization Funding for Small and Rural Communities.
All in favor? That's carried. Thanks for your work on this, Michelle.
Thank you.
Next up is the Community Paramedicine Long-Term Care Funding Report. I think we'd be bringing in Chief Waite for this.
He's on his way.
Good morning.
Good morning, Warden Danielson, members of County Council. This is just the purpose of this brief report is just to formalize with Council the discussion and resolution at Committee of the Whole on March 10th, executing the transfer payment agreement for the new community paramedic funding, and that enabled us to begin purchases utilizing the first year of funding, which is budgeted up to March 31st.
Do we have any questions or comments on this report? Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor DeVolen and Councillor Kennedy.
Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Kennedy. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council acknowledges receipt of funding approval for the Community Paramedic Program enhancement and execution of the transfer payment agreement by the CAO clerk and warden.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Chief Waite, and good luck. This is a big project. Okay, finally, under administrative reports, we have something from the treasurer on reserve allocations. Good morning, Madam Treasurer.
Good morning, Warden Danielson and members of the Haliburton County Council. You have the reserve allocation report before you for 2020. This is one of the final items required for the audit. So I'll just get to it. The budgeted transfers each year are made according to the budget. And at the end of every year, I take a look at what is transferred or what has not been spent for operating and for capital. So for the operating items, unspent funds related to operating budgets are transferred to the working fund reserve unless they fall into one of the special reserve categories, in which case they sort of go into the working capital, come out of it and go to the special reserve. Capital items under or overspent capital related to any of our capital projects are transferred to and from capital reserves as necessary to ensure funding to cover what was overspent, and to ensure funding to for future projects for things that were underspent. This also includes any projects that may have been incomplete in 2020, and the amounts left in the reserve for capital can be used for additional projects in the future. Attached to the report is a reserve continuity schedule for the end of 2020, December 31st. And that report shows you that we have $6,794,428 in reserve. Only $510,672 of that are our working fund reserve. Also attached to the report is a reserve continuity schedule. A chart showing the detail of what's on the continuity schedule. So it shows all of the transfers that we require to get to these numbers that are on the reserve continuity schedule. So if you flip to the reserve continuity schedule, you'll see that I broke the schedule into special reserves, social housing reserves, capital reserves, and then the working capital reserve. So if we take a look at that first page, the special reserves, you'll see that we have $2,319,065 in special reserves. The largest two amounts of those are related to the restart and the modernization funding that we have a special reserve for. Every month or every quarter, I try to bring you a report that shows you what we have earmarked for those funds. So those funds are largely already earmarked. This is just what is left in the balance at the end of 2020. Are there any questions on the special reserves?
Questions? No, go ahead.
Okay, the next page, page 2 of the reserve continuity schedule is the social housing reserves. You can see there that we have $327,000 in our reserve for affordable housing, and we have an additional $281,006 in our reserve for KLHHC operational maintenance for housing that we already have in existence. Any questions on those two reserves?
Questions? Nope.
Nope. Page 3 of the reserve continuity schedule is the capital reserves. Largely the biggest, we have $3,356,683 in capital reserves. The largest amounts of which are for bridges, $800,278, and for roads, $642,446, and then also for our LIDAR and flood mapping, the GIS reserve of $738,154. Are there any questions on what shows in these reserves?
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. I just had one question on the library reserves. And so we opened the opening with 39,000 and we're closing with $15,585. I actually thought the library had a greater reserve than that. So if you can just explain that.
Okay, if you flip to the, actually you don't have to flip to there, I'll read it from there. So the library, they overspent on the books this year. So there was $14,881 transferred from reserve to cover those books. And then they underspent on equipment. Actually, this is the net number. So they underspent slightly on equipment. So that is also included in the schedule. And then we had a budgeted transfers to the library reserve of $4,000, which we incorporated. And then transfers from the library reserve for the Makerspace program of $20,000, which is incorporated in the schedule. They did underspend on working cap on operations, but our process at the county is to move anything not spent in operations into our working capital fund, so our working fund. So we have 118,000, I believe, going. So I just need to find that section. Yeah, it's on page 4 of the detailed. So you can see that we had budgeted transfers, 4,000 for library reserve, plus another underspent in equipment of $7,110. And then we had budgeted transfers from the library reserve of the 20,000 for the makerspace and the 14,000 for the overspent books and capital. And we can see that we had, it's not showing there, it's showing in the working capital. Sorry, reading the wrong page. Yeah, 189,000 was unspent in operations. So we moved it to working capital for the county. Or we're recommending we move it there.
So is this subject to, I understand that you're going to be making a presentation to the next library board meeting. Is this subject to any discussion or could it be changed at that point or no?
We're trying to finalize this for audit. I believe it's up to the county whether we transfer to working capital.
Did you have any thoughts on that, Councillor Roberts?
Well, no, not really. It's okay. I just wanted clarification because I believe then it would need to, as long as Elaine comes to the library board and explains what county process is. I thought we passed a resolution that at our library board that we requested that any surplus from 2020 due to unusual circumstances, that would be kept in a library reserve, not to the county working funds. So if it's a county decision, so I just want a clarification on that. I think the library board is going to think that they've got more money in the bank, if you know what I mean, more money in a reserve. Not that they had any specific plans to spend it, but they would need clarification on that. So I would ask Elaine to come to a library board meeting.
Yeah, that's why I asked, because it was my understanding too that the unspent operational funds, that there was a request to keep them in library reserves, but we look forward to your presentation to the library board. Are there any other questions about that? Okay, carry on.
Okay, I think, sorry, now I just have to figure out where I left off. That covered the capital reserves, and then the last page of the reserve continuity schedule is what went into the working capital reserve. So basically what I do is take a look at all of the operations for each one of the divisions in the county and move the unspent funds or overspent funds accordingly as a due to reserve or due from reserve through the working capital. And then those are all documented on page 5 of the detail. And anything that went from working capital into a special reserve then also shows on that schedule.
If I could ask for one clarification on that, when monies, unspent monies from operations are transferred into a capital reserve, are there restrictions on the use of the capital reserve if money was required to go back into operations as opposed to capital acquisitions?
Don't confuse working capital funds with a capital reserve. It is a working fund reserve. So anything that was unspent on capital went to a capital reserve. Anything unspent on operations goes to this working fund reserve, okay, or to one of the special reserves, which are also, they also tend to be operational.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
And if I could highlight one more thing on the special reserves, one of the things that I had to do last year, I know there was some questions at the end of the year on how much community transportation reserve there was. I know there was some concern from department heads on legal fees. So those two reserves, we have moved whatever was excess in the prior 2 years, we moved it into the reserve specifically for community transportation and for legal fees. So anything unspent in legal in 2018 and 2019 is now in a legal fee reserve plus what was unspent this year. And then anything that was unspent in 2018 and 2019 in community transportation and what is unspent in this year is now in that community transportation reserve.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Roberts, sorry.
Thank you. Just one last question. Just curious, because we've been discussing this at Dysart about having policies around reserve funds and whether they be percentages of certain things or to a target of something, for instance, an illegal reserve for our planning department. We have been putting money aside. So where is the cap of that? What is it a percent? Is it a dollar amount? So that we actually have policies around our reserves. Do we at the county have policies around our reserves specifically, or are we just doing good due diligence? And
we don't currently have policies around our reserves. I did work on a policy a couple of years ago, which didn't come forward to council. So I can do that if council would like me to do that.
Councillor DeVolen?
Yeah, it would be wonderful to see. Putting it in policy can cut both ways, and it takes away maneuverability for future municipal governments. But it'd be worthy to see and consider whether we would want to embark upon that path. So I look forward to seeing that.
Councillor Kennedy?
I think just as a follow-up, and actually Andrea had a good point I was going to bring up on sustainability in these reserves, which I think is what everybody's talking about. And you mentioned that as we go through the budget process. That'd be a nice line for any of the reserves where I think you have identified previously approaching sustainability or not. Just a good information line. That's all. Great report. And I actually understood it for a change. Thank you.
Good. I'll take that recommendation into next year's report.
Anything further? Oh, go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
I guess I
was going to say Councillor Rudder.
Yeah. I guess I worry that we're going to get tripped up on the library reserve. And so I guess I just put the question to council. Is it are you okay if we were to change our approach and put that any surplus operating funding from the library board, rather than into the county working reserve, put that into the library reserve as requested by the library board? It's not to, Elaine is actually going on vacation for an extended period, and so she won't be able to attend the library board until May. If we're going to get tripped up on that, I think I'd rather figure that out now. And if it is a sensitive subject, I apologize, but I just think if that is the direction of the library board or the request of the library board, if we can answer that question now, it might be better than do it later.
I wouldn't say that it is sensitive, but it might become sensitive. Councillor, I'd look to hear what your thoughts are on that. Councillor Roberts and other members of the library board.
Thank you. As I stated, I don't think that there was any specific expense that they wanted to do or rationale at this point behind it, but it was the thought from the library board with that request. So I would think that would be probably a better thing to do at this point. And it was really just in the event that there might be some staffing overlap. So underspent 1 year, but perhaps could possibly be overspent in another year. And that is the concern that the library board may have this year, is there might be a situation where we would actually be overspent without us being able to plan accordingly, and we might be overspent through no fault of our own. So I would suggest that if it could be set up in a library reserve for now, that would be probably a better option.
Councillor Royale, and then our treasurer.
I think I have agreed too, because we had a pretty hefty discussion not too long ago as to once the monies have been either budgeted or given to the library board, then they become the responsibility of the library board to see what it can do with it and so on and so forth. So technically speaking, it's their money. And having said that, if they decide to put it in the reserve, that might be the right thing to do. But again, it's a bucket of worms that I really don't want to open here, and I just assume for now put it in their reserve, and then we can deal with it as a more permanent issue later.
Contrarily, while you're thinking about this, Elaine, I'm just wondering if those unused funds went into our county's reserves and the library found that they needed the funding for some reason or other, they would still have access to it, correct?
Yes, and that was one thing I did want to add. If the library was to overspend, the county does fund it from working funds, from the working fund reserve. But I have no problem putting it into, I can create an operating reserve for the library. I have no problem putting it there if that's what council desires.
Councilor Moffat.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I would rather see the library reserve in order to help the library. It has increasing costs, challenges with funding. and being able to sort of shop from its own shelves going forward when the budgets are being crafted, instead of going to other funds or to the levy, then there might be a little bit of padding in its own reserve to just keep pulling back out to offset that little bit that's being asked for from other sources. So I just see it as being a little more helpful toward the overall budgeting process. And then, there's an interim CEO coming in, and just making sure as a board that that we have more financial involvement and oversight so that there isn't overspending. I mean, sometimes it's unavoidable, but I would rather use the reserve to just keep circling back in and out of the library and take that burden off other resources.
Thank you. Councillor Shell.
I would agree that it should probably go into a library reserve. For all the reasons everyone else on the board has mentioned, and that's what I would like to see as well.
I can do that, no problem.
Thank you. I think you've heard the will of council. So could I have a mover and a seconder to receive this report? I guess it would be as amended. Councillor Shell, and seconded by Councillor DeVolen.
Moved by Councillor Shell, seconded by Councillor DeVolen. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council receives for information the staff report on the reserve allocations and approves the transfers to and from reserves as documented in the report and attachments, and as amended to transfer library board operating surpluses to a library working reserve.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And thank you for your flexibility on that, Madam Treasurer.
Thank you.
Okay, then we would get into reports and minutes from external boards and agencies. You'll see there's a set of minutes from the health unit. Is there anything that you wanted to add or highlight to that, Councillor Roberts?
As per usual, the minutes are there, but I'll do some highlights from our meeting last week, which just basically, I'm sure, as you can imagine, 80% of the staff at the health unit have been deployed, redeployed, whatever it's called, to work in the pandemic, which is really probably no other organization has been so impacted. And at the same time, they're still trying to do all the things that they are mandated by the province to do, whether it be restaurant, inspections and many other things. So it's been quite a time for them. And I'm going to quote something from Dr. Gemmell, this is his last few weeks. However, there'll be some overlap when our new medical officer of health will start. And he said he would love to go faster. We could go faster. We just need vaccines. So that is going to be our problem coming forward, and probably Councillor Kennedy can speak more to this. I mean, in an example, if our health unit, the whole health unit, gets 6,000 doses a week, and we have 6 clinics set up, that's basically only 200 doses a day per clinic on a 5-day week schedule. So every clinic, I mean, they're going to have drive-through in Lindsay. I'm not sure if that's already started up or that's about to start up. So it's sort of frustrating. I know the public all want to get their shots or needles, vaccines as quickly as they can. We just aren't getting the doses and likely won't because we're not a hotspot area. So, but our health unit is ready to go as soon as, or not as soon, they are going, but if we had more vaccines, they could go a whole lot faster. So that's all I want to say on that. If there's any questions.
Any questions?
If I could just clarify one comment, I don't think it was intentional, but we absolutely will all get vaccine. It's just a question of when. We will get the vaccine even if we're not a hotspot, but we won't get it as quickly. That's all.
I'm sorry, and that's what I mean. We could go faster. When you think about a drive-through, they could probably do 1,000 a day, but so it's just the facilities that we're going to get, the health unit is going to get up and running could take more people. It's just our health unit is probably going to get their quota of vaccines. So I apologize if I said that incorrectly. And also when our new medical officer of health comes in due course, I would like to invite her to come to a county council meeting to introduce herself and So I'll be mentioning that at our next board meeting.
That'd be great. Councillor Rail, do you have a question?
Yeah, just want to add to that. One of the local residents here who was over the 75 mark, they applied on Monday and they were approved, but they're getting their shot in Bancroft.
Well, that's good that there's some flexibility there then. Okay, we'll move on to point in time. Anything that you might like to report, Councillor Shell?
Well, we had our meeting for the month last night. It was very short and basically just dealt with the budget, but I just wanted to share that one of the things that came to me through point in time that Children's Mental Health of Ontario has released a new campaign called Everything's Not Okay. And it states that 74% of Ontarians are experiencing increased mental health and addiction challenges during the pandemic. And just important to note that for our local Haliburton County residents, that point in time recognizes this and, you know, obviously still very much invested in the mental health of youth and their families within the county. And they are open for business still and for anybody to reach out who feels they could use some assistance.
Thank you for that. Any questions? Okay, there's nothing specific to report on the Warden's Caucus. I think I talked in the past about what their priorities are for this year, and I think you've all seen a report come out from the Warden's Caucus on their priorities moving forward for the year. Were there any questions? Did you have a question, Councillor DeVolman? Okay. Anything on joint social and housing services?
We met in March on the 3rd. The principal was the Affordable Housing Target Program, of which at County Council and multiple presentations for the county and the city were aware of kind of the nuts and bolts. That was the biggest part of our meeting in March.
Okay, thank you. Anything on professional recruitment? Councillor Moffat?
Just that there's been some success with the call for housing assistance. I don't know if anything's been nailed down, but a number of people have risen to the call, and hopefully that can help out with finding our new doctors some places to stay.
Right on. Thank you. And anything more on the library board? And there's a set of minutes from February the 10th. Councillor Roberts.
Yes, and actually in there is the resolution. It says authorize the transfer of surplus from the 2020 budget to reserve. And I think the intent should have been to set up it should have been a more detailed resolution, but that is where that came from when I spoke to earlier. And at that meeting, the library board members will recall we had a lady, her name is Peggy Malcolm from Souls, do an orientation for us. And so one of our action items it says there is that we need to well, first of all, reviewing our strategic plan, or renewing, I should call it, is going to be a priority, and also policy review of our entire policies. We probably have a booklet of well over 50, and we want to make that a priority to perhaps streamline some of those policies. So that'll also be our new interim CEO's one of her projects that we'll be giving her.
She's going to have lots of work ahead of her. Okay, thank you. So could we have a mover and a seconder to accept these reports? Councillor Shell, Councillor DeVolman.
Moved by Councillor Shell, seconded by Councillor DeVolman. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council receives for information the following. The February 18th, 2021 approved Haliburton Kawartha Pine Ridge District Health Unit Board of Health minutes, and the February 10th, 2021 approved Haliburton County Public Library Regular Board meeting minutes.
All in favor? Carried. The next on the agenda is the Land Division Committee. I don't believe that there's any report coming forward this month. Then we are into external boards and agencies. Anything from Ontario Good Roads?
Yes, thank you, Warden. February, the month of February, I was away for county council. We had our annual general meeting, and I was elected president of Ontario Good Roads for the year of 2021. I'm also pleased to report that we have our newest member of the board is Travis Wilson, operations manager for the municipality of Minden Hills. I'm really looking forward to working with and serving all 444 municipalities in the province.
In your absence, we offered our congratulations and offer that again. This is a first for Haliburton County to have the chair of the board representing Haliburton County. So well done. And the same to Travis. We're going to be well represented in the years going forward. So we're pleased to hear that. Any news from Eorn? Councillor
Well, yeah, a couple of big things. Obviously, $300 million, which of which the Rogers component, like 150 million. And I would say based on recent projects, the actual numbers end up coming bigger even than the projections. This is a landmark. I know, Councillor Kennedy, that you probably have some ratepayers who will want to know the day and the week that it's coming to the neighborhood. For them, I think the intent is by the end of the year to have a map of that going forward. The 300 towers that exist, there'll be upgraded facilities, some that will start in this year. The 300 new towers being built are predominantly, having seen the map, Haliburton County, North Hastings, and Renfrew. There's going to be a lot of new builds. Obviously, those won't happen, I would expect, during the course of this year. But with my representation on the board, and there's also a new member on the board that comes from Renfrew that's in a similar circumstance to Haliburton, we will be lobbying very hard, at all with the successful proponent Rogers, is to start where the coverage is worst first and work towards those areas that may. Now, I've used this highway analogy before. Sometimes you got to build a 4-lane access way to get the technology there so you can build it out. But certainly it can't happen fast enough, and it's a landmark. And like Councillor Burton, I serve on a 2-year term, and I was re-elected for another 2 years to the Eorn board, of which we will meet in the month or two to come, and then those positions and where we go with that. There's some opportunities there, so there may be some other news in the month or two to come with respect to the Eorn board. And lastly, the Eorn board continues to work on the gig to home, and we're having a substantial meeting with the minister in the next week, whether it's a yes or a no or a continuing evolutionary path. The cell gap took years, but when you get meetings at this level, they're substantial. So the fact that the whole board is going to be involved in conversations, I won't say any more other than, again, just because we have the one project in the bank doesn't mean we're done, and we're continuing to lean that hard now into the gig project at home, which hopefully can happen in addition to the cell gap. So just exciting times. I've kind of known where this might go since September, and I've hardly been able to contain myself. So as of Friday, to be able to actually talk about this has been an enormous relief.
Well, we again congratulate you on your reappointment. We couldn't have a better person representing us in this regard, and we look forward to hearing some good news going forward. I absolutely loved the level of enthusiasm that you showed at our formal announcement. I thought that was just great. Councillor Moffat, you have a question?
I do, thank you. And I'm wondering, is it too early yet to know how many towers might be gracing the hillsides of Haliburton County? Because it's, the contradiction is, I want service, but I don't want a tower. So we know that that's ahead for us. So any idea how many, so we can sort of gird our loins? I'm not sure I'm at liberty yet to speak to that specifically. What I would say is this, and this is not a new comment from me.
having service involves towers, and we've rounded the corner, and we do not want to be a have-not for connectivity. They're going to get built, obviously, with the sensitivities and all the things that you need to go through, that they don't have unintended consequences. But if I was to take a straw poll on the street, that towers and more connectivity, more than 90% of the people of Haliburton County, I think, would have our back in this endeavor. And are we all going to be confronted with those that are not happy about that? Yes, we are, but it's a small price to pay.
Thank you for that. And that will look next to you again for anything on poverty reduction.
We have not met since the last time I spoke on this.
Okay, thank you. Getting into other business, we have the a meeting calendar. Any errors or omissions? Okay, and sadly, the formal acceptance of the resignation of our Director of Planning. So we need a mover and a seconder. Let's refuse. Councillor DeVolen, and seconder, please, Councillor Moffat. Thank you.
Before I read the resolution, I'll say I am sorry to read this resolution, and we'll certainly miss her jaunty attitude as she always approached her work in a great way. Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council accepts the resignation from the Director of Planning, Deputy CAO, Ms. Charles E. White, effective May 7th, 2021.
All in favor? Carried. I must say that we have a lot more enthusiasm for some resolutions than we do for others. Okay, we're looking for a mover and a seconder to move into close, as that concludes the open session of our business. Councillor Moffat and Councillor Roberts.
Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council enter into closed session as per section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended for the following reasons. A trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, or financial information that belongs to the municipality or local board and has monetary value or potential monetary value.
All in favor? Carried. And we'll just have a couple of minutes to transfer over to closed.
And we're back live, Warden Danielson.
Okay, welcome back. Guess all that remains for us to manage are the bylaws. So if I could move her in a seconder for bylaw number 4038 for the appointment of members to committees and external boards and agencies. Councillor DeVolen, Councillor Shell.
Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Shell. Be it resolved that bylaw 4038, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 4025, respecting the appointment of members of council and public representatives of the Corporation of the County of Haliburton, to appoint a council liaison to various council departments, and to appoint members of council as representatives of the Corporation of the County of Haliburton to external boards and organizations, be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? Carried. Okay, the next bylaw is to appoint Kestrel Forestry. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Kennedy, Councillor Burton.
Moved by Councillor Kennedy, seconded by Councillor Burton. Be it resolved that bylaw 4039, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement with Kestrel Forestry Consulting, be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? Carried. Okay, bylaw to appoint the Deputy Secretary Treasurer for the Lands Division. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Roberts, Councillor Royale.
Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Ryle. Be it resolved that bylaw 4040, being a bylaw to appoint the Deputy Secretary Treasurer of the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton, be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? Carried. A bylaw to authorize an agreement with Fowler Construction. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor DeVolen, Councillor Moffat.
Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Be it resolved that bylaw 4041, being a bylaw to authorize an agreement with Fowler Construction Company Limited for the rehabilitation of approximately 5.1 kilometers of county roads, including parts of County Road 3, 7, and 8, be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? Carried. And a bylaw to authorize an agreement with Miller Paving. Oh, I'm sorry, mover and a seconder. Councillor Shell, Councillor Kennedy.
I was sure she nodded off there for a minute. Moved by Councillor Shell, seconded by Councillor Kennedy. Be it resolved that bylaw 4042, being a bylaw to authorize an agreement with Miller Paving Limited for the surface treatment of various sections of County Roads 5, 10, 12, and 13, be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? Carried. Okay, the next two bylaws are the agreements, or to enter into an agreement with the ATV associations. The only question that I had about that was that the schedules were not attached to the bylaws, and I just wanted to get clarification on the timing. That we're still, that this, because we passed these, does not mean that the agreement is in place immediately, but based on recommendations from our Public Works Department on the condition of the trail.
I'll just bring in the roads manager, if that's okay. He's left our meeting, so that is my understanding, that it's based on trail conditions and not just an immediate thing where they're permitted on.
Okay, and are there any concerns or questions about that before we do the bylaws? All right, so the first would be the agreement with the Haliburton All-Terrain Vehicle Association. Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Burton.
Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Burton. Be it resolved that bylaw 4043, being a bylaw to authorize the warden and clerk to execute an agreement for the use of the Haliburton County Rail Trail with the Haliburton All-Terrain Vehicle Association and other provincial past members under the direct supervision of the Haliburton All-Terrain Vehicle Association be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? Carried. And the next is the agreement with the Kawartha All-Terrain Vehicle Association. Moved by Councillor Kennedy, seconded by Councillor Moffat.
Moved by Councillor Kennedy, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Be it resolved that bylaw 4044, being a bylaw to authorize the warden and clerk to execute an agreement for the use of the Haliburton County Rail Trail with the Kawartha All-Terrain Vehicle Association and other provincial past members under the direct supervision of the Kawartha All-Terrain Vehicle Association be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? Carried. Are there any notice of motion? Okay, hearing none. We have the confirmation bylaw. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Roberts and Councillor Burton.
Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Burton, be it resolved that bylaw 4045, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the March 24th, 2021 meeting of Haliburton County Council, be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? That's carried. And finally, mover and a seconder for adjournment. Councillor Kennedy and Councillor DeVolen. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Kennedy, seconded by Councillor DeVolen, be it resolved that the March 24th, 2021 meeting of Haliburton County Council be adjourned.
All in favor? That's carried. Nice to see continuity on that adjournment motion. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of the day.
Thanks. Great meeting.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Mike, could you hold on a sec? Mike March?